Introversion is not a quirk or a social preference, it's fundamental orientation of the mind. The term itself was introduced by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung in 1921, who described introversion as the inward turning of energy. In Jung's view, introverts draw their focus from the internal world of thoughts, ideas, and reflection, while extroverts orient their attention toward people, action, and external stimulation. Jung did not consider one better than the other, rather he saw them as complementary modes of being, two poles of the same psychological spectrum. Modern psychology has refined this distinction. Within the framework of the Big Five personality model, introversion is understood as the low end of the extroversion scale, a measurable, consistent trait across individuals. The NEO personality inventory, developed by Costa and McCrae, identifies introverted characteristics such as reservedness, preference for solitude, and reflective thinking. Importantly, this doesn't mean introverts lack social skill or interest in others. It means their internal batteries charge in quiet, low-stimulus settings and deplete in prolonged social engagement. Energy direction, not sociability, defines this temperament. The foundation of introversion runs deeper than personality description. It extends into the brain's biology. Hans Eysenk's arousal theory in 1967 proposed that introverts have naturally higher levels of cortical arousal, the general state of alertness in the brain. Because their baseline is already elevated, they require less external stimulation to feel engaged. Too much noise, light, or social activity can easily push them into overstimulation, which is why they often seek environments that feel calm, predictable, and controllable. Extroverts, on the other hand, with lower baseline arousal, seek out stimulation to reach their optimal alert state. Neuroscientific research has since expanded on Eysenk's idea. Imaging studies show that introverts exhibit stronger blood flow in the prefrontal cortex, the area involved in deep thinking, planning, and self-reflection. This pattern suggests that introverts are neurologically inclined toward inward, abstract processing. Extroverts, on the contrary, show greater activity in the sensory and reward areas of the brain, particularly in circuits involving the nucleus accumbens and amygdala, regions that light up during novelty and social reward. Depew and Collins, 1999.
This means that what feels stimulating and exciting to an extrovert can feel overwhelming to an introvert, not out of discomfort, but due to how their nervous systems allocate energy. One of the most persistent misconceptions about introversion is that it's synonymous with shyness or social anxiety. They are not the same. Shyness involves fear of social judgment. Social anxiety involves distress in social settings. Introversion, however, is about preference, about where mental energy is spent and where it is restored. An introvert may enjoy people deeply, but need recovery time afterward. Their silence isn't disinterest, it's reflection. Their solitude isn't avoidance, it's recalibration. At its core, introversion describes a way of processing life, slower, deeper, more inwardly attuned. It's the difference between observing a landscape and walking through it hurriedly. One mode seeks to experience, the other to understand. Neither is superior, but to grasp introversion accurately, we must first see it as nature's quiet design, a temperament of depth, focus, and internal clarity. To understand introversion fully, we have to step beneath behavior and into the body, into the biology that quietly shapes how introverts experience the world. The traits we recognize as introverted are not merely habits or preferences, they are reflections of measurable neurological and biochemical patterns. One of the earliest and most enduring explanations comes from Hans Eysenk's arousal theory. He proposed that each person has a natural level of cortical arousal, the brain's baseline alertness. Introverts, he found, tend to start at a higher baseline. Their nervous systems are already tuned to a more sensitive frequency, meaning they reach their optimal level of alertness with very little external input. For them, a crowded room, bright lights, or rapid conversation can quickly exceed that optimal threshold, causing fatigue or withdrawal. Extroverts, by contrast, begin from a lower baseline and thus seek stimulation to reach that same alert state. This difference explains why introverts thrive in calm environments and why solitude feels restorative rather than lonely. It's their nervous system finding equilibrium. But arousal is only part of the story. Deeper inside the brain, the dopamine reward system plays a central role. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that drives motivation, excitement, and reward-seeking behavior.
Studies from Harvard and research summarized by psychologist Marty Olson Laney show that introverts are less reactive to dopamine surges. While extroverts experience a strong rush from social interaction or novelty, introverts have a subtler dopamine response. This doesn't mean they lack pleasure, it means their brains are wired to avoid overstimulation from high-reward environments. Instead, introverts rely more heavily on the acetylcholine system, a parallel neurochemical pathway associated with calm focus, learning, and introspection. When engaged in solitary or meaningful activities, reading, reflecting, or deep conversation, acetylcholine promotes a gentle sense of satisfaction and mental clarity. For introverts, this calm engagement is more rewarding than the dopamine-driven excitement extroverts chase. There's also a structural dimension to this biology. Neuroimaging studies have shown differences in the insular cortex, a region that integrates internal bodily signals, heart rate, breath, and emotion, into conscious awareness. Introverts tend to show stronger activity here, suggesting that they process internal sensations and emotional subtleties more vividly. This internal sensitivity contributes to empathy and deep self-awareness, but also means they can become easily overloaded when exposed to external noise or emotional chaos. This biological tuning extends even to the autonomic nervous system, which governs how the body handles stimulation. Introverts often exhibit stronger parasympathetic activation, the rest and digest system, which keeps them grounded and calm, but also makes them less suited for constant high-arousal situations. Their bodies conserve energy, preferring steady engagement over bursts of intensity. When you put all these systems together, a clear picture emerges. Introverted behavior is not a personality choice, it's a neurobiological strategy. Preferring quiet, avoiding crowds, seeking meaningful engagement, these are not acts of resistance against the world, but natural expressions of how their brains maintain balance. The solitude introverts seek is not a wall between them and life, but a rhythm of energy conservation, allowing them to return to the world thoughtful, steady, and perceptive. To understand the introverted mind, we have to move from biology into cognition, the level where perception, thinking, and decision-making unfold.
Introverts don't just prefer quieter environments, they actually process information differently. Their minds operate like deep rivers rather than fast streams, slower on the surface but rich in complexity beneath. One of the most consistent findings in cognitive neuroscience is that introverts engage in deeper levels of information processing. Brain imaging studies, including research on the default mode network, the set of brain regions active during internal thought, show that introverts spend more time in reflective states. When they pause, they're not disengaged. Their brains are running simulations, connecting ideas, and integrating details. This internal dialogue often produces more nuanced understanding, but it takes time. It's why introverts may hesitate before speaking, not out of uncertainty, but because their minds are processing multiple layers before responding. This depth-oriented processing creates a vivid inner world of stimulation. Introverts often report that their imagination and internal experiences are as engaging as the external world. Studies from the University of Toronto found that introverts show stronger activation in the frontal cortex during imaginative tasks, suggesting they generate rich internal imagery even in the absence of sensory input. For them, daydreaming isn't distraction, it's a form of cognitive engagement, a way to explore possibilities and meaning without leaving their thoughts. When it comes to decision-making, introverts take a distinctly methodical approach. Research from Stanford University, 2013, found that individuals scoring higher on introversion scales tend to deliberate longer but make more accurate choices in complex or uncertain conditions. Their reflective style means they gather more data before committing, preferring depth over speed. In fast-paced group settings, this can be mistaken for indecision, but in truth, it's cognitive thoroughness, an instinct to think before acting, to map consequences before stepping forward. Memory also plays an interesting role here. Studies published in the Journal of Research and Personality suggest that introverts may form stronger long-term memories because they encode information more deeply during learning. Their natural inclination toward focus and elaboration, mentally connecting new material to existing knowledge, makes retention stronger. This trait supports success in analytical, creative, and academic domains where sustained thought and recall are crucial. Another defining cognitive feature is sustained attention. Introverts can maintain concentration for long periods when immersed in meaningful or solitary work. This capacity arises from lower reactivity to external distraction and a more internally anchored focus system. However, the same mechanism makes them sensitive to overstimulation. Environments filled with noise, interruptions, or multitasking quickly drain their mental energy. Their brains favor a single, deep channel of attention, not scattered engagement. In essence, introverted cognition is built for depth over breadth. Where an extrovert might sample experiences widely, an introvert dives deeply into fewer ones, extracting understanding and connection. This difference is not about intelligence, but about processing strategy, one optimized for insight, the other for interaction. Introverts live much of life through reflection, translating experience into meaning. They are the quiet analysts of the human condition, thinking before the world finishes speaking. Introverts experience emotion differently, not less and not more in quantity, but deeper in quality and texture. Their emotional life is often described as quiet on the outside, yet profoundly active beneath the surface. To understand this, we have to look at how introverts process feelings, privately, slowly, and with remarkable depth. Emotion, for introverts, is an internal event. Rather than expressing their feelings outwardly in the moment, they tend to absorb, analyze, and interpret what they feel before responding. This inward emotional style can make them appear calm or detached, but in reality, there's often a storm of reflection beneath that stillness. They live their emotions through introspection, replaying moments, weighing meanings, and trying to understand not just what they feel, but why they feel it. Neuroscientific evidence supports this quieter intensity. Studies by Conley et al. 2001 using functional MRI scans found that introverts show greater activity in the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing hub, when exposed to emotional stimuli. This means introverts react more strongly to feelings internally, even if those emotions never reach the surface. Their restraint is not indifference, it's regulation. Their brains are wired to feel deeply, but to manage emotion through thought rather than expression. This deeper internal processing is also connected to the mirror neuron system, which plays a role in empathy, our ability to feel what others feel. Research from the University of Parma and subsequent social neuroscience studies suggest that introverts often show heightened mirror neuron activation, allowing them to tune in to subtle emotional cues in others. They might not respond loudly, but they notice everything: tone, microexpressions, tension in the room. This sensitivity can make them compassionate listeners, though it can also be emotionally draining. When it comes to emotional regulation, introverts rely on solitude as a form of self-therapy. Alone time allows them to decompress, untangle feelings, and restore emotional balance. Extroverts often process emotions externally through conversation or activity, while introverts process internally, using reflection and quiet to return to equilibrium. This is why they may withdraw after intense experiences, not out of avoidance, but to metabolize what they've absorbed. Another layer to this emotional world is the misinterpretation it often invites. Society tends to equate outward expression with sincerity, assuming that visible enthusiasm equals emotional depth. Introverts challenge this assumption. Their calm demeanor, reserved tone, or lack of spontaneous reaction can be mistaken for aloofness. But beneath that calmness lies emotional containment, a kind of internal composure developed not to suppress feeling, but to manage its power. Their emotions are less likely to explode outward because they are continuously being observed, analyzed, and understood inwardly. This internal emotional life gives introverts a unique kind of strength, emotional resilience through awareness. They often understand their moods well, know what restores them, and can detect subtle shifts in their own mental state long before others would notice. This sensitivity can lead to periods of melancholy or overthinking, but it also fosters emotional intelligence, a steady ability to navigate the complexity of human feeling. For the introvert, emotion is not a passing wave, it's a current that runs deep beneath the surface of thought. They may not always show what they feel, but they feel what they know. And that union of reflection and emotion gives them an uncommon depth of understanding, both of themselves and of others. When introverts move through social life, they do so with a different rhythm, slower, more deliberate, more selective. Their social world isn't about volume or constant engagement, it's about connection that feels real. Yet this difference is often misunderstood because society tends to judge social value by visibility, not depth. To understand introverts socially, we have to look at how they manage energy, meaning, and presence. For introverts, social interaction consumes energy. Every conversation, every meeting, every moment of being on draws from a limited internal reserve. This doesn't mean they dislike people. It means their nervous system treats social activity as stimulation. The more intense the environment, noise, movement, emotional charge, the faster their energy drains. Afterward, solitude becomes necessary to recharge, just as sleep restores the body. This cycle of engagement and withdrawal is not antisocial behavior, it's biological self-care. One of the key differences in social behavior lies in the dopamine reward system. Extroverts are neurologically wired to find excitement and novelty rewarding. Introverts, less sensitive to dopamine highs, often find small talk or busy social scenes understimulating or even tiring. For them, surface-level interaction offers little emotional or intellectual reward. They crave meaningful exchange, conversations that explore ideas, emotions, or experiences in depth. This is why introverts may appear quiet in groups, but come alive in one-on-one discussions where they can connect authentically. Because introverts conserve their words, they often communicate through listening and observation. Listening is their way of engaging, not passive, but deeply active. They read tone, expression, rhythm. They notice what others overlook. In relationships, this can make them empathetic confidants, the kind of people others feel understood by. But in fast, talk-oriented cultures, this subtle style is sometimes misread as disinterest. This misunderstanding connects to what Susan Cain called the extrovert ideal in her book Quiet, 2012. In Western culture, traits like assertiveness, sociability, and charisma are often glorified as signs of confidence and competence. From classrooms that reward quick participation to workplaces that celebrate networking, the social systems of modern life often favor extroverted expression. Introverts, whose strengths lie in reflection, listening, and depth, can be unfairly judged as lacking enthusiasm or leadership potential, even when their quiet approach yields better outcomes. But introversion is not a deficit in social ability, it's a different kind of social intelligence. Introverts seek authenticity over presence. They'd rather have a few genuine relationships than many superficial ones. They prefer connection built through trust, shared values, and thoughtful exchange. They don't perform in social spaces, they participate when it feels real. At the same time, introverts navigate a world that constantly asks for visibility, speak up, show up, be seen. This pressure can create internal conflict, the desire to belong versus the need for solitude. Many introverts learn to act extroverted for periods, a concept known as pseudo-extroversion, when work or life demands it, but they always need recovery afterward. This adaptability shows that introversion is not limitation, but balance, a temperament tuned to cycles of inward focus and outward engagement. When we understand this rhythm, the social world of introverts makes sense. Their silence isn't absence, it's listening. Their solitude isn't rejection, it's repair. And their preference for depth isn't avoidance of people, it's a devotion to meaning in a world that too often mistakes noise for connection. Introversion and creativity are deeply intertwined. Solitude, reflection, and depth, the very qualities that define introverts, are also the raw materials of original thought. When an introvert steps away from noise and distraction, the mind doesn't go blank, it opens. In that quiet space, creativity finds room to breathe. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who coined the concept of flow, found that many of history's most creative individuals sought solitude deliberately. They described their most productive moments as occurring in quiet focus, where the world fell away and their attention merged with the task at hand. For introverts, this state is not rare, it's natural. Their lower threshold for stimulation allows them to sink deeply into concentration, which is the ideal condition for creative flow. Whether it's writing, coding, painting, composing, or solving complex problems, solitude gives their creativity structure and direction. Research supports this link between introversion and independent thinking. Studies on group dynamics, including those led by Irving Janis on groupthink, have shown that individuals who spend time reflecting alone often produce more original ideas than those who brainstorm collectively. Introverts excel in this solitary incubation phase. They're less influenced by social conformity or the pressure of group approval, allowing them to follow unconventional paths of reasoning. This independence of thought can lead to breakthroughs, the quiet insights that reshape fields or create art that feels timeless. Many of history's great innovators found their breakthroughs in solitude. Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." J.K. Rowling imagined the world of Harry Potter while sitting alone on a delayed train. Warren Buffett spends hours each day reading and thinking, not networking, because reflection sharpens judgment. For these minds, creativity isn't born in noise, but in stillness. Neuroscience helps explain this. Studies show that when introverts engage in creative or analytical work, their frontal and anterior cortical regions, areas tied to planning and insight, become more active. Extroverts, by contrast, show stronger activity in reward and sensory circuits during high-energy interaction. In simple terms, introverted brains are wired for inner exploration. Their creativity grows from reflection, patience, and synthesis, connecting distant ideas into something new. Research from the University of Rochester by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan also reveals that people driven by inner satisfaction rather than external rewards create more deeply and sustainably. Introverts often embody this intrinsic motivation. They create not for applause, but for clarity, to understand, to express, to refine an idea until it feels true. Their creativity isn't loud or impulsive. It's patient and enduring, shaped over time, in silence, through observation. Many of humanity's most profound ideas began this way, in the still mind of someone comfortable being alone. Introverts approach relationships with the same depth and intention. They don't collect people, they cultivate connection. Because social energy is limited, they invest it carefully, favoring a few deep, loyal bonds over wide networks. Their communication is thoughtful. They speak to express meaning, not to fill silence. Writing, calm conversation, or quiet presence often become their most authentic forms of expression. In conflict, introverts pause before reacting. They step back, not to withdraw, but to regulate emotion and respond with clarity. Once trust is built, it runs deep, their loyalty is steady, and their companionship sincere. Yet their need for solitude can be misunderstood. Time alone isn't rejection, it's restoration. In healthy relationships, this rhythm between connection and space allows true intimacy to grow. Solitude for the introvert is not emptiness, but nourishment. Neuroscientists have found that during quiet states, the brain's default mode network activates, the system responsible for reflection and self-integration. What appears to be stillness is actually the mind reorganizing, learning, and aligning. Through reflection, introverts make sense of experience, shaping a clear and consistent sense of identity. Their inner dialogue, the constant mental narration and questioning, deepens self-awareness. This reflective habit often brings existential insight, a search for meaning, purpose, and truth beneath everyday life. Many introverts are drawn toward philosophy, art, and spirituality because these pursuits mirror their natural curiosity about what lies beneath the surface. The world sometimes mistakes solitude for loneliness, but for introverts, it's where clarity begins. In silence, they reconnect with themselves, recharging, rebalancing, and rediscovering direction. In a culture obsessed with noise and speed, their stillness becomes a quiet form of wisdom. Culturally, introversion is often misunderstood. In Western societies, visibility and assertiveness are praised, while quiet reflection is seen as passivity. Schools reward participation more than thoughtfulness, and workplaces often confuse confidence with competence. Yet research from Harvard and Wharton shows that introverted leaders often excel, not by dominating, but by listening and empowering others. Other cultures tell a different story. In East Asian societies, for example, restraint and humility are respected as signs of maturity. Quietness is often seen as wisdom rather than weakness.
These contrasts reveal that introversion isn't a flaw, it's a temperament that flourishes or struggles depending on context. Today, perceptions are shifting. The
The growing awareness brought by authors like Susan Cain and Marty Olson-Laney and the rise of remote and creative digital work have begun to balance how we view personality. The world is slowly learning that progress needs both voices, the expressive and the reflective. Extroverts may propel action, but introverts give it meaning. Together, they create a more complete picture of human potential.